Hello, welcome to IG Live. I'm excited to be back. It's been a while since we've done one of these live conversations, and I'm really excited to be joined today by my partner in crime, Ericka Saurit of Saurit Creative. And today we are going to be talking about what it means to be a creative renegade, why we think that's important, how it impacts the business that you create for yourself, your brand, how it affects the way you lead and the decisions you make. So it's really exciting. I see Ericka is coming on now. So let me get her live. She should be checking in here in a second. I hope I did it right. It's our first time in a while. There she is. It worked. Yes.
I wait, I gotta do a quick screenshot.
Yes.
All right.
Cool.
Hi.
So good to see you.
So good to see you too.
So I was just kind of saying, since I came on first, that it's been a while since we've been here.
Yeah.
And what we were going to be talking about, what it means to be a creative renegade. And, we had a quick conversation before jumping on here this morning, but I would love for you to share with everyone who's with us now today and may watch the recording afterwards, like what made you want to get back on IG Live with me and have these conversations?
Obviously, I love our conversations. We've been talking to each other for the last couple of years, sort of about a mix of topics, branding, marketing, interior design, and creative business entrepreneurship, and what it really means for women to step into their power as creative business owners, as leaders. And I think we have been, when we came to the idea that maybe we've been talking about this one thing, creative renegade, like being a creative renegade has been the topic of, oh goodness, sorry, turn off my announcements here. I think we've been talking around this, but without naming it for the last couple of years. I think we both feel really strongly that being a creative renegade, we're both creative renegades in a way, and we're going to talk about really what that means, but how important that is in defining a brand, defining a brand that stands out. What does it mean? How do you do it? And we can look at this from two different angles. I love that you bring this sort of rich background in the design industry as a creative director, but also as a business leader. But you bring to this the kind of very kind of front end side of brand development. How do you, align with your values? And I'll let you speak to all of that. And I bring the sort of the opposite end, which is how do you have all of that, package it, right? How do you create a marketing plan? How do you tell a story on social media or on your website or in an event, right? How do you kind of deploy that message and get it out to people? So the idea that we've been finally able to pull this together and give it a name and give it an entity is super cool. And I think we're ready to now use this platform, which is kind of cool and a little exciting and then maybe a little scary to share that. So is that?
Yeah. No, I if you don't mind, I'm going to answer the question I just posed to you, as well, because like I said, it's been a while since we've been on here. And so what was it that sort of lit a fire under my butt to be like, Ericka, what do you think? Are you ready to go do this again? And, I think you're like one of the things, and I'm going to be completely honest here about my inspiration here, because I think I'd kind of lost some love for, coming live and talking about things because wasn't really feeling like we landed on it. What is it that we're really trying to talk about and deliver? So just as you were talking about, we didn't have a name for this thing of what we're talking about. And now that we've landed on the name, this is all I want to talk about.
I think it's kind of a landmark idea. I'm really excited. And I will say, we're going to have these conversations every Monday couple times a month, three Mondays per month. But we'll also be speaking and then hosting a workshop, a really hands-on workshop at High Point Market, and that's cool. So
Yeah.
ways for us to kind of unpack what this means and how people can begin to apply some of these ideas and principles to their own brand.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks so much for mentioning that. I'm so looking forward to it. I think one of the things that I love about our conversations and all the things that we've done at High Point together is that I feel like we have a roadmap. You know, we each have a roadmap that has essentially the same destination, I think, right? But the ways we get there are so different. And so I'm always fascinated by your point of view because it's never what I would automatically think of.
Likewise.
You know? So it's just really, to me, I just find that really fascinating. So should we talk about what it means a little bit to be a creative renegade? Do you want to kind of first go through and kind of give your definition of what it means?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of things to say about that, but I will say a creative renegade obviously is someone who's taking a lot of chances in their business, but doing that not but doing that with a roadmap, with their own kind of internal desire to succeed, no matter what, right? And we'll talk about that in a second, but failure is always a part of growth, and failure is always a part of self-discovery, and knowing that internally, I think, is what drives a creative renegade to push themselves, right? To just try new things. I will say also a creative renegade is not concerned at all about what other people are doing. I think I hear from a lot of clients, you know, how do I differentiate myself? There's a lot, and I work mainly with interior designers and home brands. There's a lot of competition now in this market, right? And, you know, even in my town where I'm trying to get new clients, in my region, you know, if they're doing e-design, there's a lot of competition sort of maybe within that industry. But what I think is important is to say creative renegades are not at all concerned with that because they're making their own category. They're really thinking about themselves more as tastemakers or as leaders, right? They're not looking around to see what other people are doing, and they're confident with that. And I know that takes time, and we both work on that with our own clients. But I feel like the creative renegade, in order to be successful, just puts on blinders and gets down to doing what it is they know their purpose is pushing them toward doing. And so that's where I'll start, because I know we're going to talk a little bit, you know, bounce some ideas around about that. And do you want to jump in with your definition?
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably going to pick out because I have a long list and I have it here in front of me, so I wouldn't forget everything. But if I were to really distill this down into like, I think the most important 3 aspects that make up a creative renegade, I would say number 1, and this is the most important, that a creative renegade is willing to trust themselves more than anyone else. And I think that speaks to, you know, what you were just saying about having the blinders on. I think the way I look at this, it's also about, you know, one of my favorite quotes by Dolly Parton, which is figure out who you are and do that on purpose. I mean, that's a part of really trusting yourself more than anyone else. It's like really knowing who you are, being willing to bring that into the work you do, almost feeling as if you want your work to be a self-portrait of who you are, you know, to be an outside expression of yourself, right? Yeah. And that's scary. Yeah. That's scary for a lot of people, right? Because I find, and just as you said, even though people may come to us saying, I want to figure out how to differentiate myself, I find a lot of times people are looking to do it in more superficial ways, you know, that don't feel vulnerable. And I never feel like those are really successful because they're usually not authentic. It's more following a trend, looking at what other people are doing rather than really trusting their past experience, their point of view, you know, what their gut is telling them, you know, those things that they know to be true, but they can't explain, you know,
Right.
but just want to go that direction. So, you know, listen, a creative renegade is willing to do that. I'm not going to say they're always going to be successful because nobody's perfect.
Right.
And as I was telling you, the fabulous Stephen Ken, who is an amazing furniture designer from Los Angeles, I had a conversation with him last week, and one of the drop the mic moments he had in our conversation was perfectionism is a myth.
Mm.
And so I think, just as you said, a creative renegade believes that, because perfectionism really can be handcuffing and can prevent us from ever taking one step forward, right? And when we move forward with something, that's when it becomes real.
Yeah.
Being stuck in that idea of this has to be perfect before I even begin, well, then nothing becomes real. But it's a safe place to be.
Super safe. But I love how you said this before, and I'll bring it up, that, you know, the hardest step sometimes is just getting started, right? Just putting the first thing out into the world feels like it should be the best representation of yourself and what you can do, when sometimes it's a better idea to just put something out there just to get started, to give yourself the confidence to just go, right? And I see this a lot with clients, like on social media or on their website. Like, they put it off because they feel like it has to be this, like, I don't know, this thing that they'll never touch again, or it has to be this sort of perfect representation, when in fact, if they don't have any anything out there, right, because they're too kind of locked into getting it perfectly perfect, right, or instead of it being perfectly imperfect, then, you know, they're getting in their own way. So
Yep. You know, there's a great book called The Art of the Start, which is all about this idea that you're talking about, which is ship it and then fix it. Like, you got to put stuff out in the world, you know, and kind of let people bump up against it. You know what I mean? Let yourself see it out in the world and be like, it's not quite right. I mean, that's what we've been doing together for the last 2 years, right? We've been putting stuff out into the world, and we've been going, we're still not there yet. We think we're there now with this creative renegade, but who knows, in 6 months we might decide we found another better idea that feels more authentic and on point.
true.
So,
But we will never, we don't, you know, again, if we don't continue to have conversations that we have, which I think are really, really, you know, illuminating, and sometimes you need another person or a group of people to really be able to figure out what it is that you're circling, you know, what that one thing, that one essence. And I will say, if we can jump back to kind of brand differentiation, I will jump in to say, you know, it's very, very difficult, but the very first place to start when you're defining, you know, your message and figuring out your position, right? Are you in the right spot? Are you talking to the right people? Figuring all of that out is the most difficult part of marketing and branding, period, like hands down. And it takes a lot of deep insight into your business, into who you serve, right? Who your audience or your clients or your customers are. And what you really, not what you do. What I see from almost all of the clients that come to me is to say, I'm not standing out, I'm not getting leads from my whatever marketing channel. What am I doing wrong, right? Or what do I need to fix? And, you know, I look at it and I think, well, it's almost the same as what everybody else is doing and saying. And then they say, but that's not who I am, right? I'm like, I'm doing all this, and then I'm like, well, that doesn't show up at all in your marketing. And so we work together with clients to kind of suss out that deeper work. It takes time, right, to really figure out what that story is. But once you have that differentiator in that position, which is, I think, what a creative renegade really, really knows and runs with. Again, that's that part of, like, making their own category, is like, you know, they're not going to sit in a place where they can be compared to anyone else. There's just no all, right? And that's how you out.
Right. Well, like, I love that you're talking about this right now, because, like, from an energy perspective, like from a leadership perspective, you know, when you are so dialed in to what you are doing, you know, from that perspective of, like, this is uniquely me, there is no competition. Like, it just all falls away. There's no I win, you lose. There's no, like, any of that. It's like, it's just like, listen, everyone's going to win here. and I'm just going to keep doing my thing and not worry about, everyone else, or what my hairdresser tells me what I should do, or what my husband tells me what I should do, or what my old boss used to do. Because I don't know about you, Ericka, whenever I've taken that advice from people, it has not been the right direction for me. And that doesn't mean that those people didn't mean well. Of course they meant well.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
But it's like we have to be willing to trust ourselves more, which I think can be really difficult to do. It can be really difficult to do. I've been really thinking about this a lot lately, and I've had a couple of conversations with clients in the last week, because this is something that I've really landed on as we've started talking about the Creative Renegade, that if there's only one thing that people get out of the work that I do with them, one thing, if it's that they learn to trust themselves, then I 1000% think the investment of time and money is completely worth it. Because think of how much time people waste in self-doubt, in feeling like an imposter, and what would change if you really just were able to dial in, stay connected to like what's important to you, stay connected and trust in your vision, really trust that your values are guiding your decisions better than fear. Like, what changes? For me, listen, because I've been through all of this in my career, right? Like, I've created what we both have. We've both created the lives that we've wanted and the careers that we've wanted out of thin air. Let's give ourselves a pat on the back. That's big work. I mean, you're calling from France. You're in France right now, so like, I think we need to acknowledge that we have the power to do that, and it all comes from really trusting ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and Creative Renegade is, I won't say they're fearless, because I think that's inaccurate. Say that any of us are fearless, even though we may choose and desire and really sort of push that as a value, like I want to be fearless and bold, but they're not fearless. They just know that with every chance they take, right, that the reward might be learning from failure. The reward might come from, stumbling a little bit and getting it wrong, but then learning immediately, like, okay, I know exactly now what to do to get it right, or to move forward and trying to kind of like learn from it. So that kind of fearlessness part, boldness, is huge, right? And it comes from trusting yourself, and that takes time too, right? It takes time to build that confidence. But you're right. I have seen in the shared kind of clients, and even in the people that we know together, I have seen tremendous, and in our work together, tremendous value in that one thing, and that's like really building up, your sense of self, and your self confidence, and your trust that
There's another thing, and I'm so glad you pointed out that I don't think fearlessness exists either, unless you're a psychopath. There's no such thing. There's just no such thing. There isn't, because even the greatest leaders in the world experience like fear and bravery at the same time. So I think what we're really all craving is bravery, courage. Because I feel scared all the time. Are you kidding? Like, I mean, it's making a choice, being able to recognize, am I making this decision from fear, or is this a value-based decision? Because I realized, and I'm always looking at my values. Like, I was just re-looking at my values this morning and thinking about, is this really where I want to be focusing? Like, what values are really going to help me make better decisions? And I had this realization just this morning as I was sitting down and kind of writing it out and journaling through all this. And the first list of values that I wrote down felt, when I thought about the words, they felt like, what's the best way to put it? I felt resistance in my body when I thought about each word. And I felt more of like a pushing feeling, which to me is a signal that's not coming from the right place. And then I wrote a list of different words that felt more like ease and flow in my body when I thought about them. And I'm like, no, those are the words that are going to take me in the right direction. Those are the values. And I think a lot of us, myself included, have had to learn this, have been taught, you should have certain values, right? I have a client I'm working with right now who told me one of his core values is get shit done. And that's one of the company values. And yet he doesn't like talking about it to his team. There's inner conflict, right? So to me, that's a signal that something's off. Either that value is in opposition with one of his other core values, which I think it is, or it's a value that, he thinks he should have rather than one that he really wants. So I think this is something to really, again, this goes back to what you were saying about this is deep work. Like, this is deep work.
Deep work.
It's not something you rush through. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Jenna, can you give an example of a good word and a bad word? Okay, I'm going to give you mine from this morning. What's that? A good word and a bad. I'm not going to say the F word. Don't worry. So, like for me, this morning, and this is going to sound so strange, but this is just for me. So for me this morning when I was doing this, the one word that came up was independence, which I am. I'm a very independent person. That's why I work for myself. That's why I've created the life I have for myself, right? However, there was something about this morning, thinking about independence as a value that felt like fighting rather than ease and flow. And so the word that I shifted to was community. So that's just one example. I hope that's helpful, but this is really all about like really getting in touch with how words feel in your body, because your body will take you in the wrong direction. Or sorry, will always take you in the right direction, will never take you in the wrong direction. It really does give you signals if you're really paying attention.
I would say there's a kind of maybe a drill down process that can happen. And this is what we do sort of in brand strategy too, to try to get to the heart of what that is. It's like asking yourself why, and try to get five whys out of that examination, right? Let's say, look at the word community, right? Why is community, I mean, you start really high level. Why is community important? Once you have an answer to that, you ask a why to that question, right? And you should be able to, at the fifth level of why, know for sure if it's a good word or a bad word, right? And maybe that happened with independence. You got down, sometimes you don't even get to the fifth, you kind of say, okay, right? Something about this feels wrong in my body, or feels like it's going to be a little bit maybe in conflict with some other things, or it's just not as strong of a concept as I don't feel so strongly about it once I get down to a couple of the reasons why, right? So I think that's a really good place to get started, and with a lot of your questions too.
Yeah, and I think what you just pointed out is something that's really important. People are typically either feeling or thinking people, right?
Ooh,
so it's either easier for them to identify a feeling than a thought, or a thought rather than a feeling. So for thinking people, it's easier for them to answer the why, the why, the why. For feeling people, that's hard. Feeling people like the message is going to come from their body. So this is another way of again, figuring out who you are and doing it on purpose. Really understanding who you are is so important. So I think this kind of work of being a creative renegade, standing out from your competition, understanding what works best for you. And one of the things you said earlier about failure being part of the process. You used a word with me earlier, which was resilience, which I think is such a great identifier of what a creative renegade is, because I also think a creative renegade, they don't accept defeat, in the sense that, every challenge or failure is an opportunity for growth, and change and a learning. And so that is their natural default, or that's what they want it to be. It's that, listen, there are no challenges, there are only opportunities. Okay, we messed this up. how do we go back now and create a new process, a new system? How do we do this better next time so it doesn't happen again? What can we learn from this? I think that's also probably, if I were going to say the two most important things, that trusting yourself and then being able to look at challenges as an opportunity, because that's what makes you resilient.
Resilience is a big, kind of a big topic as well. Because I would say when we talked about how are we going to define and package the idea of a creative renegade and sort of help people step into and understand if that's something that resonates with them, how then, what are steps they can take or what are things that they need to do and how will this help them with like their marketing or with their own kind of brand building and not just business development. And so we looked at like the three maybe components of what a creative renegade is, and that is the idea that they are resilient, that they are differentiated, right? Like, and that's kind of what we began this conversation talking about, is like really following that kind of uniqueness, that thing that makes you different, and making sure that there's a place for it. And then I will say, is it relevant, right? Who is it that you are? Because again, most of us are working for a living and we are trying to sell our services, sell our products, sell some part of the business that we offer, right? But being relevant to, you can't be relevant to everyone, right? And that's right. How you have to know your audience. But like, who are you relevant to, and do they really resonate? Does it really resonate with them what you offer back, right? And that's when with those three things that you've got a great fit with your brand, and if you are leading as a creative renegade. So to sort of embrace those three components, right? The resilience part, growth through, not necessarily struggle, it doesn't have to be hard, but like right. Growth through development, right? And you can define development however that means to you. Sometimes it's massive, and sometimes subtle things that drive you forward. Are you resonating with the right people? And then, are you different?
Yeah. So, I completely agree, of course, with everything you just said. And I think like all three of those things go back to something you said earlier, which is takes deep work. So I think another characteristic of a creative renegade is that they aren't looking for a quick fix.
No.
They're actually willing to dig deep, which is not always easy. Yeah. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it feels really uncomfortable and we don't want to look at what's there. We'd rather just rush it. Just give me the marketing plan, Ericka. I don't want to talk about this. Just give it to me.
Give it to me.
You know what I mean? But I think a creative renegade realizes that there's no magic pill. There's no quick fix. This is really about creating, a really solid foundation for your growth. As a business, as a brand, as a team, and being willing to put that work in, whatever it is,
I know we're going to get to this. So we've structured this into multi-part series of conversations where we start to, like, this is our big kind of introduction conversation. And I know that like we will eventually get to what does that look like? Like, how do you deploy, like right now we're talking about a creative renegade as a person, but like it's super important for people to understand how to lead as a creative renegade, what that looks like as, the top, or, with your hand in your own business, or if you're at the top of an organization, how do you structure, a leadership strategy that encourages and supports and builds up a team, right? And brings them along with you. Super, super important to get people to buy into your ideas and buy into your vision and the way you want to execute something, especially when they work for you or they work with you, right? So it's not just internally your team in your business, but it's also people and partners you work with. Like, I work with a lot of contractors. It's important for for them to buy in, for sure. But how do you bring along new partners, people you want to collaborate with, right? How are you executing from a creative renegade point of view?
Right. Yep. I
some comments. That's cool.
Yeah, we're hearing great comments about the importance of personal work and honesty. And oh my God, honesty is so important. Please don't call me up if you're not willing to be completely honest, because you're just going to be wasting your time. But one of the things that you said that I think is so important on such a large scale, which is getting buy-in.
Yeah.
Getting buy-in is so important, and this is something I talk about a lot with clients, you know, especially if they're complaining about how difficult it is to manage their team, you know, or getting them to show up the way they want them to. And it really is all about getting buy-in, you know, creating context. You know, I've told you my Armani story before. I'm not going to tell it now. I'll tell it some other time. But that was a what? What's that?
I said DM Jenna for your Armani story.
Yeah,
really
DM me if you want to hear the Armani story, because it's a good one. And by the way, DM either one of us if you have any questions or comments or things you want us to address in the future about this Creative Renegade conversation. But one other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about, you know, being a Creative Renegade, getting that buy-in from your partners, from your employees, etc. The other thing that came up is like, I don't want people to think that just because they're not a business owner that they can't be a creative renegade, because I believe you can be a creative renegade also within an organization, which is probably going to make you the most vital person in the organization.
Of course. Agreed. Yeah. Completely agree. Agreed.
Yeah. So it's been about a little over 30 minutes. I know we said we were going to kind of wrap it up at 30.
Yeah.
But appreciate everybody who showed up, waved, gave comments, questions today. Really appreciate you joining us on our first Monday, which we'll be doing this again 3 Mondays a month at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. As Ericka mentioned earlier, we're also going to be... What's that?
At 4 p.m. Central European Time.
4 p.m. Central European Time. And the two of us are going to be at High Point again this October talking about this subject. And we're going to be doing a workshop as well, a pretty in-depth workshop. So if any of you all have questions about that or interested, how do I join? Send to either one of us a DM, and we'll look forward to seeing you both here on live and hopefully in High Point.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it.
Very well summarized. Thank you for, again, everyone. I love these comments, and so good to actually see all of you and see you all in High Point in person. But until then, like I said, like Jen said, reach out with any questions. And if you want us to talk about something more specifically, let us know, and we'll structure the next series with, you know, the questions we are sure to answer. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ericka.
Love that. Have a good.
Okay. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.